Welcome to Scott Fox After 9. I'm pretty excited about this episode because I've got some really great audio to play for you. And it's going to touch on a couple of different things in this episode. Number one, I've got a great Canadian story that I'm going to kick things off with, and it involves a member of parliament from Manitoba and the premier of Ontario. So that's coming up. But I'm also going to do some American stories, and one of them, I got to talk about it today. I know there's a lot of people who messaged me and asked me if I would. Scott, are you going to talk about what happened yesterday in Minnesota? That terrible tragedy. And yes, I consider that a tragedy. I am going to talk about that in this episode, and I'm going to do some fun stuff too. I've got some audio related to the U.S.'s quest to take Greenland, and an amazing question got asked yesterday of U.S. Vice President JD Vance. And I found it very, very refreshing and honest, and from the perspective of the middle class. Some of them anyway. And the question was very simple. You've gone in and you've liberated Venezuela. You got the oil and you interrupted the flow of drugs. Good for you. But some of the drugs that come out of Venezuela, people really like cocaine. So what are we going to do about that? And the answer that came from the U.S. Vice President, I thought was very, very refreshing. So you're going to hear all that and more on this episode of Scott Fox After 9. I'm getting ready for this weekend. Saturday's going to be the night that I drop the silent date tell-all. Leading up to Saturday, I'm going to play some little snippets from what you're going to hear on Saturday from the tell-all. Here's a little teaser of what you can expect this weekend if you download the Silent Date Update. You're not even a dancer. I can't even imagine what this looks like when you do it. So walk me through the dance. We're in a hotel room. She's sitting on the bed and she says, dance. What's going through your mind?
I think the biggest mistake I ever made was doing this stupid drunk dance getting out of the hot tub on our first trip away together, and that just kind of laid the groundwork for where we are today.
Is that what it was? Was it just so... Okay, that's all you get. Saturday night, the silent date tell-all is going to be awesome. We talked about so many different things, and listening back to it, I mean, I sound drunk, and I probably was. So was he. I mean, we were having a good social night, and we recorded the tell-all. So you'll hear the whole thing on Saturday. You're going to hear some clips from previous episodes, and you'll hear the tell-all, and you can hear from Silent Date Guy in his own words this coming weekend. So make plans to join me for that, because it's going to be a lot of fun. Now let's get into the episode. To start, I want to take you back to just the other day. Ontario Premier Doug Ford doing a news conference to kick off 2026, and the question got asked again. Are you seriously going to pull Crown Royal out of the Ontario liquor stores?
You are going to remove Crown Royal from the LCBO store shelf?
Oh, 100% I am. 100%. No, I'm just going to focus on Crown Royal for now. But isn't that great with the moves that we've made in the last year? We've seen wine sales jump 76%. So that's great for the grape growers, the small wineries, the large wineries, and any other alcoholic beverage that we have. We've seen it spike since we've taken the wines off the shelves. So we have great Niagara wineries. We have great Ontario wineries.
Okay, that's a little bit of what Premier Doug Ford had to say. Well, here's the thing. The U.S. never banned Canada's alcohol. We banned theirs. Now, Doug Ford is running around like he's some sort of a hero in the wine industry, like he saved the Ontario wine industry because he was able to force the American alcohol out. He got rid of the competition for them and allowed the Ontario growers to basically own the market. Well, he's talking about banning Crown Royal as well. And that's different from banning U.S. alcohol. Crown Royal is Canadian. I'm really, really happy to see that finally some members of parliament from Manitoba are standing up for their product, Crown Royal. James Bezin, I believe is his name. He is the member of parliament for Selkirk, Interlake, Eastman in Manitoba. He sent a tweet with Doug Ford's own words that I just played for you. He sent a tweet and he said, every drop of Crown Royal is made in Gimli, Manitoba, using Manitoba grains and pure Interlake water. Our farmers and Crown Royal employees in Gimli are proud of their award-winning whiskey, Canada's #1 spirits export. Premier Ford, instead of attacking an iconic Canadian whiskey, let's tear down interprovincial trade barriers and put Canada first. If you go ahead with your threats, do not be surprised if Manitoba pulls Ontario wine from our liquor markets. Here we go. That is a Conservative member of Parliament from Manitoba basically drawing a line in the sand for a kind of conservative premier in Ontario. He's the leader of the Conservative Party, the Progressive Conservative Party, but I'll just leave it at that. Everybody knows what I'm thinking, right? And I know a lot of you are thinking it as well. He's the leader of the Progressive Conservative Party, but oftentimes some of the policies that come out of Doug Ford wouldn't necessarily be considered very conservative. James here, the member of Parliament for Gimli, Manitoba, wants Doug Ford to back off. And he's saying, if you don't, we may have to pull Ontario wine from Manitoba liquor stores. I don't know what kind of a financial hit that would be for Niagara wine growers, but I'm going to suggest they've got it pretty good. Doug's already taken all of the American liquor out of the LCBO. He has already told adults you may not make your own choices. Doug Ford makes your choices for you, and Doug Ford has decided that you can only drink Canadian wine. The American stuff, forget it. You want Sonoma, you want Napa, no way. You will drink Canadian wine because he is the king of Canada. So Doug Ford here, on a massive control kick, controlling the market, may actually lose a market for these Ontario wine growers because Doug Ford is so insistent on banning Crown Royal, which is a Canadian company. Again, let me go back to the tweet that James Bezin sent out here. Manitoba is where it's made. It uses Manitoba grains. It has pure interlake water. The farmers in Manitoba and the Crown Royal employees in Gimli, Manitoba are proud of their award-winning whiskey, and it's Canada's #1 spirits export. Why is Doug Ford still messing with this? I don't get it. I do get fired up every time this topic comes up because I think it's wrong. I think Doug Ford was a tyrant during COVID, and he kind of came off of it for a while. He went back to normal for a bit, but his cheese has slipped off the cracker. If he thinks banning Canadian alcohol from the LCBO is a smart move, and if this ends up costing a market for Ontario's wine growers, that is a crying shame. Doug Ford is playing with fire right now. Absolute fire. If Canadian provinces start restricting which alcohols they're going to sell in their provincial liquor stores and favor the ones from their own province, then we've made no progress whatsoever towards Canada Strong. All Canadian products should be on a pedestal. Restricting one because you don't like them is batshit crazy. I really don't know when he's going to reverse course, but if he bans Crown Royal from the Ontario liquor stores, and that's scheduled to happen in about a month now. If he actually goes through with it, we could have a trade war with Manitoba, the province right next to us. That's the kind of fire Doug Ford is playing with right now. And you know what? I'd love to say it's scary, but it's not. It's actually kind of funny. All that hoopla about breaking down provincial trade barriers, about allowing Canadian products to flow freely amongst all the Canadian provinces and territories. It was all bull. It was all a lie. It was all gaslighting. Doug doesn't believe in that if he's going to ban Crown Royal from the LCBO. So we'll see where it goes. But I want to congratulate James Bezin, the member of Parliament, again for Selkirk Interlake Eastman. You stay on top of this, my friend. You stay on top of this. And it sucks for the Canadian alcohol makers, but I understand if you've got to pull the Ontario stuff out of Manitoba, we get it. Do what you have to do, James. I don't want to see it happen, but if it does, it actually will be kind of hilarious. But either way, I'm going to move on from that now because I do have other things I want to get to in this episode. And again, thank you for checking into it. Right now, let's talk a little bit about what happened yesterday in Minnesota. Minnesota, ICE agents, these are the immigration enforcement officers. They've been given a mandate to deport people who are not supposed to be in America. And they're supposed to be starting off with the worst of the worst. They're supposed to be going after the ones who are criminals or who should have never been allowed into America in the first place. That's who they're supposed to go after. Well, there's some protesters who feel that it's unfair that ICE is deporting people. And they're exercising their right to protest. And yes, you do have a right to protest. But how you protest, that's where we can debate whether or not it's legal. I'm going to tell you the story as I understand it. The woman who was sadly killed yesterday, shot by ICE agents in Minnesota, was reportedly staging a protest. She had been obstructing ICE's work in that area all day. And when the camera started rolling, when the confrontation happened, it does look to me like she started to move her car forward toward the agent that ended up pulling the trigger and shooting her to death before the car eventually crashed. Is that how we handle situations, by the way? Because I know that a police officer is allowed to use deadly force if they feel that they or a member of the public are in life-threatening danger. I understand that they're allowed to do that. Was this a good example, though, of I'm going to shoot to kill? Did he really feel like his life was in danger? Because I don't think there's any disputing the fact that this woman did start to move the car forward toward the ICE agent. I don't think there's any doubt about that. The car was moving and it was going toward the agent. And some are saying that's all that agent needed as grounds to go ahead and pull the trigger like he did. But she wasn't going very fast. That's one. Not very fast at all. She had just started rolling. Number two, it seems like the police officer, after he pulled the trigger, was able to simply step to the right, out of the way of the car. Was he really in that much danger if he was able to simply step aside and avoid the vehicle? I don't want to second guess law enforcement. I know that they deal with situations all the time where they have to make split decisions in the moment. In this case, the officer decided he needed to pull his gun and fire several shots into the car and kill this woman. A lot of people think she was just trying to flee, that she wasn't trying to run the police officer over or the ICE agent over. But either way, you can't change the fact that she's now dead. And that's a tragedy. 37-year-old woman, mother of 3, has been shot to death over something that I don't think should have come to this. There's a lot of fault here. Before we get to breaking some of that down, let's hear from Kristi Noem. She is the U.S. Homeland Security Secretary. She did a news conference yesterday where she talked about the circumstances of this case. Let's give Kristi a listen.
The vehicle of the individual in question who was blocking the officers in with her vehicle, and she had been stalking and impeding their work all throughout the day. ICE agents repeatedly ordered her to get out of the car and to stop obstructing law enforcement, but she refused to obey their commands. She then proceeded to weaponize her vehicle, and she attempted to run a law enforcement officer over. This appears as an attempt to kill or to cause bodily harm to agents, an act of domestic terrorism. The ICE officer, fearing for his life and the other officers around him and the safety of the public, fired defensive shots. He used his training to save his own life and that of his colleagues. He was treated at a local hospital, has been released, and is now with family. I encourage the American people at this point in time to pray for him, but also to pray for the deceased's family and her loved ones. Today alone, in this country, there have been 4 different domestic terrorist attacks on federal officers by the ramming of vehicles. 3 of them happened here in Minneapolis. We've seen over 100 of these vehicle rammings happen in just recent weeks, and this must stop. ICE alone is facing a 1,300% increase in assaults against them and an 8,000% increase in death threats against all of them. In fact, the very same officer who was attacked today had previously been dragged by an anti-ICE rioter who had rammed him with a car and drug him back in June. He sustained injuries at that time as well. And let me remind you why we're all here in this city today and why we've been here. In communities across this country and here in Minneapolis, we're just enforcing the laws that we have in this country. For years under President Biden, tens of millions of dangerous criminal illegal aliens, terrorists, and suspected terrorists were allowed to invade our country over our southern border. They were allowed to steal, to defraud, and to perpetuate violence against American citizens. Regardless of who your mayor or who your governor is, President Trump promised every single American that he would make America safe again. He promised every single American that he would work to protect them from dangerous criminals. Since Governor Walz has been in charge of Minnesota, we have seen homicides go up by over 50%. That's also during Mayor Fry's tenure as well.
Okay, I don't know that we need to hear all the stats on crime in Minnesota, but one thing I want to say is that has nothing to do with what happened in this case. We have a woman who is protesting, and yes, you have a right to protest, but how you protest, that's something that we can debate. Was she obstructing ICE officers? Well, it seems like she was obstructing ICE officers. I mean, I don't know if that's really in dispute. I think what's really at stake here is, was that officer's life in danger? If it was, he has every right to use deadly force, and he did in this case, so he must have felt like he was in danger. That's certainly what Kristi Noem there suggests happened. But was he actually in danger? Because again, the way I saw this video, I watched it. The wheels were moving. The car was definitely going toward the officer. But when he pulled the trigger and fired the first shot, then he just sort of stepped to the right and was able to fire more shots in through the driver's side window. If he could just step aside and have access to the side of the vehicle, then I don't know that he was in imminent danger. But one of the things I want to be cautious of here is not overly second-guessing these police officers or ICE agents. Yes, law enforcement has to be accountable. They have to follow the rules. And in this case, I don't know that that happened. But I do know that this woman was driving her vehicle toward the officer. I don't think there's any disputing that. She was moving toward him. Would he have been able to get out of the way? I still think he might have been able to, but he made the determination that he wasn't able to. And that's when he pulled the trigger and fired those shots. Who was this protester? Was she truly just a citizen concerned about immigrants in her country, or was she a paid protester? The suggestion coming from officials is that she was a paid agitator. There's people out there that like chaos. There's people out there, globalists, that want anarchy, that want another round of George Floyd style protests in America. And by the way, that shooting yesterday happened only a few blocks from where George Floyd was killed. What is it about Minnesota? Minnesota involved in a really, really bizarre scandal involving an incredible amount of taxpayer money being wasted and stolen by this fake Somali daycare operation, as ridiculous as it sounds. I'm not going to try and explain all the nuance to you, but feel free to go ahead and look it up. All the different scandals with money that have been happening in Minnesota. Now, all of a sudden, these protesters show up and they want to take on ICE agents. Well, now one of the protesters is dead and we can't take that back. So where do we go from here? I think the only solution is we got to dial down the temperature a little bit. It's getting too hot. If someone is paying protesters to go there and agitate ICE officers, I think the person paying them probably holds a lot of responsibility in this particular circumstance because they shouldn't be doing that. If someone truly believes in their political convictions and they've decided, I'm going to go out and I'm going to stage a protest as I'm allowed to do. Sure, they're allowed to do that. But someone paying other people to go out and try and stir up stuff, that's not right either. That's not really protesting based on your principle. That's somebody doing a job for somebody else that doesn't want to do it. And that's not right either, especially when their whole job is to obstruct and taunt and all the other horrible things that are being done to ICE agents in America. I also think we should remind everybody here. I think this is an important detail. These ICE agents are following orders. They're following instructions. The protesters here, they don't actually have a problem with ICE. If they stop and think about it, they've got a problem with the administration in Washington. The ICE agents are just doing what they're told. And what they've been told is get rid of people that aren't supposed to be here. And at the heart of it all, those people aren't supposed to be there. They didn't cross into America legally, follow the rules, and all those things. There was much more to it. A lot of them snuck into the country and they just shouldn't be there. That's why ICE is going on a mission to deport them. Let's now hear from the mayor of Minnesota, the mayor of Minneapolis, sorry. I don't even know what this guy's name is, but Jacob Fry, that's it. He had some really bizarre and unhinged comments yesterday, and I don't think that this is helpful either. Listen to Mayor Jacob Fry from Minneapolis.
And I have a message for ICE. To ICE, get the fuck out of Minneapolis. We do not want you here. Your stated reason for being in this city is to create some kind of safety, and you are doing exactly the opposite. People are being hurt. Families are being ripped apart. long-term Minneapolis residents that have contributed so greatly to our city, to our culture, to our economy are being terrorized, and now somebody is dead. That's on you. And it's also on you to leave. It's on you to make sure that further damage, further loss of life and injury is not done.
How do you get to be the mayor of a major city like Minneapolis and be that disconnected from reality? I don't understand that part. The mayor here, get the F out of Minneapolis. Get out of Minnesota. No, they're law enforcement and they're doing exactly what they were ordered to do. And by the way, they were ordered to do it by the president who was duly elected by the people and given a very strong mandate to make sure that people who aren't supposed to be in America get deported. I don't think he's helping. He's ramping up some of the tension between protesters and ICE. That's not helpful. It's really not. Listen, at the end of the day, this is a tragedy. I think that ICE agent probably panicked to a certain extent. He saw what was going down. He knew that it could be bad. He's clearly had an interaction in the past, based on what Kristi Noem said, where he was actually dragged by protesters in a vehicle. I don't blame him for being a little trigger happy. I wish he wasn't. I wish this woman wasn't dead, but I also wish that she would have complied with law enforcement. I have no problem with her protesting. I disagree with how she did it, but ultimately that would be up to the courts if she actually did anything wrong. What I have a problem with there, and in a lot of these cases where there is a police-involved shooting, whether you agree with them or not, whether you've done anything or not, it is so much better for everybody if you comply with the police. If the police roll up on you, they say, hey, put your hands behind your back. We're going to put you in handcuffs and we want to ask you some questions. Even if you've done nothing wrong, there's really not a lot of upside to resisting because you're going to create a dangerous situation. But we hear it all the time. People in handcuffs generally don't present a problem for police, meaning they don't typically get assaulted or shot and killed by police when they're in handcuffs. It's part of the reason they put them in handcuffs is to make sure that they're not a threat. Well, if a woman is in a car refusing to follow orders and she just arbitrarily decides, I'm leaving, and she starts driving away as the officers are right there at her vehicle and there's another one standing right in front of it, what is law enforcement supposed to do? You're driving a vehicle. It could be a weapon right at the cop. I wish he hadn't shot her. I really wish he hadn't done it. I have a feeling he panicked. I think maybe she panicked to a certain extent. When ICE was ordering her, get out of the car, I think that's probably when it sunk in. Oh boy, I'm getting arrested and I don't want to get arrested. I've got kids at home. I can't deal with going to jail right now. And she tried to flee. I understand the instinct, but that is such a bad thing to do. Again, agree or disagree with the cop or the law enforcement. You have to follow instructions and you'll sort it out afterwards. Hey, if the police detain you and they had no right to detain you, get a lawyer and deal with it because they violated your rights. If the police accuse you of a crime and lock you up, you will get a date in front of the judge. You will get a chance to defend yourself and go ahead and call out the police for how they acted in that case. But making that decision, the police are wrong, I'm right, I'm leaving, and trying to flee, nothing good can come from that. If you're ever in that situation, and God, I hope you're not, just try and keep in mind, the worst thing you can do is run. Nothing good is going to come from that, and the odds of you getting away are actually very slim. Police spend a lot of time training for situations where someone is fleeing, where they've got to pull over a vehicle that doesn't want to stop. We got to get to a place where people aren't trying to run from the cops. I mean, that's where a lot of this stuff comes from. And it's a tragedy, and I feel bad for this woman, but this was avoidable on a lot of different levels. It really, really was. And hopefully this doesn't turn into a powder keg. And I know that there's some who are really trying to stoke the flames and make it into a powder keg. They want to see this explode. They want rioting and protests across America to protest what ICE is doing. They want to make a martyr out of this woman. I don't think that's appropriate. Yesterday, Democratic Senator John Fetterman was in Washington. He was asked about the news conference from Secretary Noem, and he was asked about the incident. Here is, again, a Democrat senator talking about what happened yesterday. Listen to this.
What happened with this ICE officer and the shooting in Minneapolis, and that you've been supportive of the work of ICE over the vast year? Do you think that they were at fault here?
I mean, it's devastating. I mean, it's absolute tragedy. My heart goes out to her family. I mean, I don't know the circumstances. I haven't seen the actual video, but a life is lost. I mean, it's a tragedy, and absolutely. And you know, my views. I support ICE about deporting criminals. I don't support and understand if you want to target otherwise hardworking people. I don't support that. I never have on that. I remain pro strongly immigration, and that's never going to change. So here we are now, where a woman's dead, and that's tragedy. And you know, we'll know the circumstances. I'm not going to make any judgment other than just express my sympathy for the family. I mean, just what a tragedy.
The mayor of Minneapolis says that ICE should get the F out of their city. Do you think they should get out?
I mean, I'm not that close to the kind of violence and the tragedy, so I don't want to judge that. But for me, I think it's all probably always more helpful to turn the temperature down and just withhold, you know, the kinds of extremes to say, hey, like, you know, let's everybody, you know, turn the temperature down, honestly. Whether that's coming from, like, some kinds of the rhetoric from Secretary Noem or the president, or whether the mayor or governor. It's like, really, let's just turn down the temperature, and we can't forget someone's lost their life, and now we have to investigate the circumstances, because that should never happen.
And I think that's a great balance. I agree completely with the Democratic senator from Pennsylvania. Yeah, it's a tragedy, but we can't have leaders on either side ramping up the flames here and trying to make this into a bigger deal, because frankly, it really doesn't need to happen. It was a tragedy. It was avoidable. I wish that she had done a lot of things differently. I wish that ICE agent had done things differently, and you know, all of this could have been avoided in all likelihood. But it wasn't. It's a tragedy. Let's feel bad for the victim, but let's not turn this into something it doesn't need to be. And it doesn't need to be an excuse for people to go out and burn down property and hold riots and go looting and things like that, which is some of the things that happened in the aftermath of George Floyd. I think they're two totally different stories. They may have happened in the same place, but it's not apples to apples. So that's that. I'm going to move on here because I do have a few more things that I want to fit into this episode. And I promised you I would like to talk about U.S. Vice President JD Vance today. JD Vance sat down and did an interview with Jesse Waters last night for Fox News. And he talked about the situation in Venezuela, maybe giving us a little bit more information about what the Trump administration is thinking. And eventually I'm going to get to the clip about cocaine. So stick around. That's coming up. Here's the Vice President.
It was a fake Russian oil tanker. They basically tried to pretend to be a Russian oil tanker in an effort to avoid the sanctions regime. But people always ask, how do you control Venezuela? And we're actually seeing it play out in real time. The way that we control Venezuela is we control the purse strings, we control the energy resources, and we tell the regime, you're allowed to sell the oil so long as you serve America's national interest. You're not allowed to sell it if you can't serve America's national interest. And that's how we exert incredible pressure on that country without wasting a single American life, without endangering a single American citizen.
Interesting, because, you know, I mean, I've heard a lot of officials in America, namely the Secretary of State, trying to say that the U.S. is not occupying Venezuela. But that's kind of contradicted when the Vice President says, we control the purse strings, we control the resources, we control the administration. I mean, no, they don't actually have people on the ground there running Venezuela, but it still sounds like they kind of control Venezuela. Go ahead and sell your oil, no problem. But you've got to serve the American interest first. I mean, Venezuela is an independent country, and you know what? At first, I was okay with this because I thought that Maduro had to go. I really think Venezuela needs to either hold free and fair elections right away or install the legitimately elected president who wasn't president because Maduro was an illegitimate president.
Taking out a dictator in Venezuela, how does that help the average American?
Well, a few things, Jesse. First of all, what it means is we're going to be able to control the incredible natural resources of Venezuela, which is good for America in a few ways. Number one, it allows us to put leverage on our enemies. Number two, it makes sure that if Americans need high quality, low cost power, we're always going to have access to it. And then the third thing is it does demonstrate American military excellence, which makes people afraid to cross us in the future. Some of the best ways that you maintain the peace is to make it clear that you carry a very strong sword if you ever need to use it. So I think it's good for us in a lot of different ways. We also have to remember, Jesse, this is in our neighborhood. This is not Iraq. This is not 7,000 miles away. This is in our neighborhood. If we cannot follow the basic principle, which has been a cornerstone of American foreign policy for 200 years, that we control our neighborhood, a lot of bad people are going to take advantage of it. What the President of the United States said is, in our neighborhood, the United States calls the shots. That's the way it's always been. That's the way it is again under the President's leadership.
Again, he's not really sounding like the Americans aren't controlling Venezuela. He's basically just saying it. We're controlling Venezuela. And that is a direct contradiction to some of the other leaders in America who are coming out and saying, no, we were getting Maduro. We got him. We're going to do a great deal for oil for America. But Venezuela is still Venezuela, and they will have a Venezuelan government. That's not the vibe I'm getting from the vice president here. And I like the VP. I think JD Vance is just great. And in all likelihood, he may very well be the next president of the United States. But either way, the way he's explaining Venezuela, I don't think is going to be comfort to many people who do not want to see the Americans exerting that much control over everyone in this hemisphere. Another question for the president or vice president, came up. This one was about the president's desire to take Greenland.
Greenland, how far are you guys willing to go?
Well, the president is going to make the ultimate determination here, but there's been a lot of bellyaching from Europe, and Europe has failed to contend with the fundamental argument the president and the entire administration has made. Greenland is critical, not just to our national security, but to the world's national security. People don't realize this. The entire missile defense infrastructure is partially dependent on Greenland. If, God forbid, the Russians or the Chinese, not saying they're going to, but if, God forbid, in the future, somebody launched a nuclear missile into our continent, they launched a nuclear missile at Europe, Greenland is a critical part of that missile defense. So you ask yourself, have the Europeans, have the Danes done a proper job of securing Greenland and making sure it can continue to serve as an anchor for world security and missile defense? And the answer is obviously they haven't. They've underinvested in their security. They haven't done a good job of securing that area, that landmass. And what I hear them say is they'll always make an argument about the past. They'll say, well, we fought together in World War II, or we fought together in the war on terrorism. And we're grateful for that. We love having these allies. But just because you did something smart 25 years ago doesn't mean you can't do something dumb now. And the President of the United States is saying very clearly, you are not doing a good job with respect to Greenland. We're going to make sure we defend America's interests. And I think the president's willing to go as far as he has to make sure he does that.
They're saying it's too cold for American soldiers to handle. You've been there.
Who was saying that? Jasmine Crockett?
The Danes. Probably Crockett, too.
I think Americans have done very well in some very cold places. I will say I wouldn't want to serve there, but luckily the vice president's residence is here in Washington, D.C.
I mean, it seems like the Americans want Greenland, and they're going to get Greenland come hell nor high water. But I don't know if I agree with that argument. I'm really not sure that that's the reason. Because Denmark hasn't done a very good job at installing a missile defense system. The U.S. wants Greenland so they can install a missile system. Why doesn't the U.S. just lease an Air Force base there? There's lots of countries that they don't have, that they have a military presence in. They've got a huge military presence in Germany, and they have nothing to do with Germany. There's all kinds of examples around the world. Why can't they just set up a military base on Greenland? I'm sure Denmark would allow them to do it. They want Greenland for a couple of different reasons. Defense isn't the only one. Greenland has oil. Greenland has precious minerals. They've got a lot of resources. And yeah, it's a direct access to the Arctic. If the Americans control Greenland, they basically control who goes in and out of the Northwest Passage. That is an essential shipping route, especially as ice melts in the Arctic. They want control over that, and I don't blame them. I just want to make sure that this deal gets done fairly for the people in Greenland. The rumor is that everyone in the country is going to get $1 million U.S. along with U.S. citizenship. just to do exactly what they're doing now. Except they won't be under Dutch rule. They'll be under American rule. I don't know, for $1 million US, I might take that offer if that's what they're dangling. Will there be an offer for Canada, do you think? Think Trump would give every Canadian $1 million US to become the 51st state? I think it would be a lot less. But hey, either way, we'll watch and see where things go when it comes to Greenland. This question was also asked yesterday, though, of the U.S. Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, when he was speaking to the media. Here's his take in a very much more diplomatic way.
To lawmakers, does the U.S. intend to buy Greenland? Does the U.S. intend to buy Greenland? Can you clarify your comments to lawmakers this week?
Well, that's always been the president's intent from the very beginning. He said it very early on. I mean, this is not new. He talked about it in his first term, and he's not the first U.S. president that has examined or looked at how could we acquire Greenland. There's an interest there. But so I just reminded them of the fact that not only did Truman want to do it, but President Trump's been talking about this since his first term.
Interesting. I did fact check that because I wasn't aware that Truman also wanted the U.S. to get Greenland. And as it turns out, yes, that is true. One more on this topic. The U.S. press secretary is Carolyn Leavitt. Yesterday, she was doing a briefing at the White House and a reporter asked her about the situation with Greenland. This is 30 seconds. Listen to this.
The president feels he needs to own Greenland and not and put out the threat of military action when this could be done through diplomacy.
Well, who said diplomacy isn't taking place behind the scenes, Dasha? I mean, the president is interested in diplomacy. His national security team is as well. And of course, he's always willing to pick up the phone for everybody and hear out their concerns. But the president is the president of the United States of America, and he's always going to be very clear about what he views as being in our nation's best interest.
Okay, a strong suggestion that a lot of this is bluster. A strong suggestion that there are negotiations taking place behind the scenes. No, there's not really a danger that the U.S. is going to invade Greenland and take it forcefully. The suggestion here being that there is going to be a deal done and the U.S. will likely end up with Greenland. I mean, I have no reason to think that they won't end up with Greenland because it seems like that's something they are hell-bent on. Last thing I want to do in this episode, and I think that this is a really refreshing question. I want to congratulate Jesse Waters from Fox News for even asking this one because it's something that's taboo, especially in a broadcast format. But let's be honest. We all know that there's drugs out there that a lot of people use. There is a heck of a lot of people, and unless you're into it, you might not know. There's a heck of a lot of people that like using cocaine. And Venezuela was an exporter of cocaine. A lot of it went to America. Some of it comes to Canada. What do we do now that the U.S. has interfered with the flow of drugs from Venezuela to America? I think everybody agrees they wanted the fentanyl to stop, but they did kind of like the cocaine. And that question got asked of the vice president yesterday. I think the answer is just as refreshing as the question because I think there's a lot of people who are interested in this. So let's hear them out.
You guys have designated the cartels as terrorist organizations.
Because they are, yeah.
How do you win the war on drugs if Americans love cocaine?
That's the one big pushback I've gotten is when I criticize the Venezuelans for trafficking cocaine. You had a lot of people say, we don't like fentanyl, but some people do like cocaine. Unfortunately, cocaine is a very bad drug. And importantly, Jesse, it is a major profit center for the Venezuelan cartels. So if they sell a little bit of fentanyl, but a lot of cocaine, and they use that cocaine to spread and further their cartel operations, that means a lot more poison is going to be coming into the United States. So for all the people that love cocaine, I am sorry, the President of the United States does not love cocaine. We encourage you to go to rehab, and we're going to keep on pursuing America's interest.
I found it refreshing to hear the vice president say, yes, even people are complaining to him. If you screw with Venezuela, we won't be able to get much cocaine anymore. I think that was refreshing. I'm glad he admitted it. Him saying it's a dangerous drug, you should go to rehab. Yes, of course. That's what a public official is going to say. But in reality, there's a lot more people using it than I think the average person would let on. I've personally never once touched cocaine. I don't know even how to use it. I didn't even smoke cannabis until it became legal. I'm kind of a rule follower. But even I'm aware of how many people love cocaine, including some very high-ranking individuals here in Canada, by the way. Ooh, totally unrelated. Totally unrelated. But I have an update on a story from yesterday. Liberal Member of Parliament and former Cabinet Minister Chrystia Freeland has announced she will resign as the Member of Parliament for her riding on Friday. This woman doesn't understand the urgency here, and she does not understand the conflict that she has created. Chrystia Freeland posted about it being an immense honor that she had serving her constituents and all Canadians in Parliament since 2013. She pledged to continue to help build Canada in every way she can while championing the brave fight for the people of Ukraine. Monday, Ukraine's president announced he'd appointed Freeland as an economic advisor and developer in her country. Freeland then announced her resignation, but not until a later date. This is creating a big scandal, and this is not one that we politically disagree on. There are New Democrats, there are conservatives, there are Bloc members, and there are a lot of liberals that understand this was a massive conflict of interest. She can't be taking a check from the Canadian government, and a pretty darn good one at the same time, by the way, and also be advising a foreign government. Everybody that's looked at this situation from all the different angles has found a red flag here. It is a major lapse in judgment that Chrystia Freeland thought she would be able to juggle both jobs. But the pressure is clearly setting in. Clearly, this came from someone above, and really the only people above her are in national security and the Prime Minister's office. Now she's going to resign effective Friday, January the 9th. Can't go soon enough. I don't know why she didn't say my resignation is effective immediately, and it should be effective immediately. You've been advising a foreign government. December 22nd, she got offered this job. December 24th, she informed the Prime Minister she'd been offered the job. December 27th, before they told the Canadian people that Chrystia was going to take this job working for the Ukrainian government, Mark Carney and Chrystia Freeland announced another $2.5 billion of Canadian money for Ukraine. This screams corruption. This screams conflict of interest. It's remarkable that she still has not stepped down, and she won't until tomorrow. Hey, tomorrow's a listener DMs episode, friends. I would love to hear from you. What do you want to talk about? Am I right or wrong on the Minnesota thing? Am I right or wrong on the Greenland thing and the Venezuela thing? What do you think about Doug Ford banning Crown Royal from the liquor store? I'd love to hear from you about whatever is on your mind. And by the way, it doesn't have to be something that I have talked about in the pod. It could be anything you want. Have you got an issue that you want discussed? I would love to hear from you. Slide into my DMs at Scott Fox on air, and I will catch you right back here in less than 24 hours for a Friday Listener DMs episode.